Welcome everyone to this special occasion for Shōgen to be empowered as a Dharma holder. And we have wonderful guests here, all of you of course, but also Carla, Shōgen's wife, and daughter Ali from Texas. So we're thrilled. So let me just say a few words about what we're doing. So a senior student receives the designation of Dharma Holder when they're entering really the last stages of their formal training with me. So for Shōgen and I have been practicing together, I can't remember when.
19 years.
Oh my God, 19 years. No wonder my memory is gone. Really. And we all know Shōgen's devotion, right?
Yes.
And driving every weekend, I don't know, it's like 4 hours each way to be here and to just deeply immerse himself. And also he has a group, some of you are here from the San Luis Obispo group. Yes, welcome. And in addition to that, he has a group in the prison, and he also works in hospice care. So
unfortunately, none of the inmates could be here.
None of the I'm sure they will feel the energy of this day. So, wow, 19 years. It's really a special time. In December, Shōgen and Senshin will receive Dharma transmission. So Shōgen just has to toe the line for just a few more months. All right. A Dharma holder gives his life over to Zen and has little personal self-interest. This is the ideal. Zen is the person's life. Their maturity, spirit, energy, laughter, warmth, strength, sensitivity, devotion, direction, and selflessness inspire and touch others near and far. So we're inspired, right, to be in his presence. They exemplify devotion to the lineage, including one's teacher. Dharma holder training always includes maintaining the student-teacher relationship. Otherwise, the status of Dharma holder goes kaput. That's a Dharma word. The appointment of Dharma holder allows the assistant teacher, which is what a Dharma holder becomes, to offer Dharma talks, hold interviews, lead sesshin, offer workshops and classes, conducts various ceremonies and services and other activities, such as koan instruction, depending on their ability and permission of the teacher. So this is really nearing, right, the full empowerment as a Zen teacher. So as part of this empowerment, I present a purple rakusu to Shōgen, and this was made by Carla. And you'll have to all come up and see it. It's absolutely stunning.
I haven't seen it yet.
That's right, you haven't seen it yet. He's been very good at keeping a secret. So, in the back, I always write something, and Shōgen gave me a whole list of things, but I ignored all of them. I wrote, being one with all Buddhas, I turn the water wheel of compassion. For Shōgen Angyo, Angyo is our peacemaker family name, on the occasion of Dharma Holder from Waku Egyoku Nakao, April 14, 2019. ZCLA Great Dragon Mountain, Buddha Essence Temple. We'll chant the verse of the Kesa.
Vast is the road of liberation, a formless field of benefaction. I wear the Tathagata teaching, serving all sentient beings. Vast is the road of liberation, a formless field of benefaction. I wear the Tathagata teaching, serving all sentient beings. Vast is the road of liberation, a formless field of benefaction. I wear the Tathagata teaching, serving all sentient beings.
Shōgen, I have your certificate of Dharma Holder. This certifies that Mark Bloodgood, Dharma name Shōgen Angyo, has been installed as a Dharma Holder and may teach Zen and give interviews under my tutelage. This 14th day of April in the year 2019, ZCLA Great Dragon Mountain, Buddha Essence Temple, Dairuzan Bushinji, Los Angeles, California, from Waku Egyoku Nakao. So, Shōgen will, Dharma Holder Shōgen will now give a talk, and you'll get to test his understanding.
Are we going to chant the shows first?
Oh, we didn't chant the show side. Oh, we better do that.
We did.
We need the energy. All right.
Shosai myo kichijo durani.
Namo Sammanda Motana Maharaji Kodosha Somananto Jito Engyaga Gaki Gaki Yunyam Shikura Shikura Hara Shikura Hara Shikura Chishita Chishita Chishuri Chishuri Sohaja Sohaja Senshi Yashiriye Somako Nomo Sammanda Motana Maharaji Kodosha Somananto Jito Engyaga Gaki Gaki Yunyam Shikura Shikura Hara Shikura Hara Shikura Chishita Chishita Chishuri Chishuri Sohaja Sohaja Senshi Yashiriye Somako Nomo Sammanda Motana Maharaji Kodosha Somananto Jito Engyaga Gaki Gaki Yunyam Shikura Shikura Hara Shikura Hara Shikura Chishita Chishita Chishuri Chishuri Sohaja Sohaja Senshi Yashiriye Somako.
In reciting the Shosai Myo Kichijo Durani, we dedicate its merits to the all-pervading and everlasting three treasures. We especially dedicate its merits to the further accomplishment of Mark Shōgen Bloodgood, May his aspiration remain firm, and may our vows to accomplish the Buddha way be realized together.
All Buddhas throughout space and time, all Bodhisattvas, Mahasattvas,
Forgot my seat.
Gatha on opening the sutra.
The Dharma incomparably profound and infinitely subtle is always encountered but rarely perceived, even in millions of ages. Now we see it, hear it, receive and maintain it. May we completely realize the Tathagata's true meaning.
Angulimala Stops. Main case. Angulimala was a bandit and a murderer in the time of the Buddha. One day he saw a bhikkhu, a monk, walking at his normal pace in the forest and ran to catch him. However, no matter how fast he ran, Angulimala could not catch him. Thinking this was an ordinary bhikkhu, Angulimala stopped and shouted, "Stop, recluse! Stop, recluse!" The Buddha responded, "I have stopped, Angulimala. Now, you stop too." Angulimala asked, "Now, when I have stopped, you say I haven't stopped. I ask you, O recluse, how is it that you have stopped and I have not?" The Buddha replied, "I have stopped forever. I abstain from violence toward living beings. but you have no restraint towards things that breathe. So that is why I have stopped, and you have not. Hearing this, Angulimala realized that this was the Blessed One. A great change of heart came over Angulimala. The verse. Who once did live in negligence and then is negligent no more, he illuminates the world like the moon freed from a cloud. Who checks the evil deeds he did by doing wholesome deeds instead, he illuminates the world like the moon freed from a cloud. Good morning, everyone. I'm going to skip the future corpses thing. I'll save that for another time. So the shosai that we just chanted together, the translation is marvelously beneficial, disaster-preventing Dharani. May it be so for the exchange. So thank you all for the gift of your presence on this beautiful spring morning at Great Dragon Mountain, Zen Center of Los Angeles Buddha Essence Temple. And a special welcome to those of you that may be new to us, or this is your first time. And special thanks to those of you that have traveled from afar to be here. As Roshi Egyoku had mentioned, we have Kanjo and Huetsu from the San Luis Obispo Zen Circle up in San Luis Obispo. And I can't forget my best friend, my lover, and my wife, Carla. And our oldest daughter, Allison, Allybug, that flew all the way in from Austin, Texas, and it was a big surprise. Carla came in, she hit the doorbell up at Dad's house, and I thought it was, go out and help get stuff out of the car, open the door, and there she is. We have a newer tradition here on Great Dragon Mountain where we make sure that we remember our Native American heritage. And so we remember the Tongva that were living on these lands thousands of years before us. So join me in acknowledging and paying our deep respect and gratitude to the Tongva people, our forebearers. Back to our koan. Angulimala Stops. Now, this doesn't come from any of our regular koan collections. This is actually a story from the Pali Canon, and these are pretty old stories. And specifically, it comes from the middle-length discourse. And this is a collections of, they call them suttas or sutras, teachings, attributed to the Buddha or some of his close companions. So this is called the Angulimala Sutta. And I asked Roshi Egyoku to take the story that really spoke to me and turn it into a koan. So she has some experience with this, taking stories and turning them into koans. She's about to publish a book with Eve Marco, Bernie's widow, on householder koans. And this story speaks to me very personally, connected to my service as a chaplain at the California Men's Colony, which is a state prison up in San Luis Obispo, where I hang out with murderers and drug lords and gang members and the like. And I've been up there for 17 years now. It's called the CMC Buddhist Fellowship Group. We even have a listing in the Water Wheel, which is our newsletter. And it's an outreach group of ZCLA. I was first brought to this by Daniel Nagas Chita Buckley. Many of you know him as Uncle Nagi, Thich Min Nyat. And he got me started in this work. He was inspired by Thich Nhat Hanh and Roshi Bernie Glassman. And he subsequently founded the Strawberry Dragon Zendo, which was primary focus on chaplaincy to the incarcerated. We had a group here some time ago called the Angulimala Prison Project that was here for a number of years, and likewise there's now an international group called using that name, Angulimala. This is also a story that resonates with many of those who are incarcerated, because it's a story of transformation, that change of heart that the koan speaks about. And as with most cases, koan cases, there's more to the story. It's an interesting story. I won't go into all the details, but it's basically Angulimala was born, this is India, he was born to the Brahmin caste, upper caste. So it's a really kind of well-to-do family. Dad was a chaplain. He was a royal chaplain to the king of Kosala. Well, on the night he's born, Dad has a horoscope done, and the horoscope indicates that he's going to lead a life of crime. So he goes to the king actually the next morning, and he said, well, so how'd you sleep? And the king said, funny thing, I didn't sleep very well at all, because my swords at the foot of my bed were all aglow in the middle of the night. And I was worried that there was some harm coming there's some premonition, some harm coming to the kingdom or to me. Well, Dad said, not to worry, that was just my son being born. And he told him about his horoscope and what was going on. And the king asked, will he be a lone robber or the chief of a gang? And Angulimala's dad says, he'll be a loner, Your Majesty, and then says, what if we were to kill him now and prevent future misdeeds? I'm glad my dad didn't have that opportunity, knowing how much grief I would give him later on. So his parents give him the name, his birth name, of Ahimsaka, which means harmless, hoping he will grow into that. Well, grow he did. He's huge and strong and powerful. I think of Shaq O'Neal when I think about him, and they make movies of him, and he's just this enormous guy. Well, he's also was very well schooled, very bright, and he goes to the best university. While he's there at the university, he kind of shows his moxie and his talent to his teacher, who's one of the most prestigious teachers in all of India, and becomes very close to him. And in all essence, he becomes the teacher's pet. And the other students become jealous of this teacher's pet, and they say, we want to break these two apart. So they get this whole scheme of having three groups go to the king separately, or to the teacher, separately, to kind of, plant this seed. And the first group that's there, of course, he says, get out of here. This is, don't come between me and my son. And eventually it starts to work. The seed is planted and starts sprouting. So the teacher then devises his own plan. And he said, I must kill him, Ahimshika, or get him killed. But it's going to be pretty difficult to kill somebody that's that strong and powerful. And it would look bad if I did it close to the university, because people might get the wrong idea and not show up as students. So he has his plan, and he requests an audience with Ahimshika. And he says, it is the duty to give a gift of honor to your teacher. He was just completing his studies. And Ahimshika, devoted student that he is, says, sure, yeah, what is it? He says, you must bring me 1,000 human little fingers of the right hand. This will then be your concluding ceremonial homage to the science you have learned. I'm glad we don't have to fulfill anything like that. So we kind of fast forward now. to where our koan came in, but actually taking a quick step back, there was there's some discussion, they don't know for sure, what caused him to switch and go ahead with the plan. Because at first he said, well, there's no way, my family's a peaceful family. We're not going to do that. But he decides to take it on. And so some people say, well, in that day, maybe the guru-student connection, it's just no matter what the guru said, that was it, you did it. And then, of course, others say it was the premonition of the life that he would lead. So his shadow side is given energy, and he decides to take that. And, of course, he could have gone to the charnel grounds in India. They have corpses, and he could have cut the fingers off there and brought him back. But something inside spoke to him, and he decided to get his own victims. So he gets weapons, goes back close to his home in the Jalini forest, close to Kosala, where he begins his killing spree. He waits on a hillside, and as he sees people walking down the road, down he goes, murders them, takes off their finger, and he hangs these fingers up, and of course the meat rots, birds eat them, and the bones fall to the ground. And he decides to take them up off the ground and makes a necklace, a garland, and hence his name, Angulimala, finger garland, which is what it means. So at the time he sees Buddha, his mom, Angulimala's mom, is also walking down the road. And his mom had figured it out. She said she figured out that Angulimala was really her son. So she's going to go warn the son and try to save him. And Angulimala sees this, and he's ready to do her in. He has 999 fingers on that garland. Only one more to finish the goal. And then Buddha appears. And our koan, where he can't catch the Buddha, and Buddha tells him, you stop too. Now, have you ever experienced a moment like that? I'm sure I hope there's no serial killers in our midst, but in your own life, a change of heart, maybe to go from what you considered a so-called bad trait to something that you thought was a better trait. I read this story recently to the inmate group, and one of the gentlemen, I was asking them, so, what happened? Because some of these guys have made a complete transformation. I can see it. And I said, what was the turning point for them? So I had various stories. One was from Ben. He's 59 years old, a lifer, serving 15 to life for murder. He's been incarcerated now for about 34 years. He's coming up on his 8th parole hearing. Now, Ben admitted he wasn't always a model prisoner. First 7 years of incarceration, he got clean, he was doing pretty well, and then got reintroduced to marijuana inside. You can get anything inside, I can tell you that. And then eventually back into heroin. And so it was a downward trajectory. He found himself, he told me he was San Quentin, found himself in what we call ad-seg, where it's a solitary confinement, and it means administrative segregation to the whole. And this was a padded cell, and the cell didn't have bars on the windows. The windows were up very high, but the actual bars were welded open. So he was exposed to the outside from that window. And there was a rainy, cold night. Rain was coming in. He was drenched, eventually passes out, wakes up with his face on top of the pad, which was totally wet. And he said, I can't take it anymore. I just can't take it anymore. and he changes. And I won't go into the rest of his story, but I've been working with Ben for a long time, and he's doing some good things inside. So what does it mean to stop? And what is this change of heart? I have my own personal story, and it's one that Allie and Carl already know about. This is first marriage. Goes back a long way, and it was a pretty dysfunctional relationship, and I was having a pretty tough time, and was actually following my then wife around with her therapist, figuring if we use the same therapist, they would know both sides of the story. I could make a better deal. Maybe that's a bad thing to do, but I thought it was a good thing to do. So I went to her, and Laura was an amazing therapist, and we ended up, she read me very well, because when I am in issues, I read everything I can. Even though sometimes I'm told not to. And about the second session, she said, these are pretty expensive book reviews. One of the books she had me read was Women Who Love Too Much. She said, get yourself to Al-Anon and tell them you're a man who loves too much, and they'll understand. And they did. And I've been going through what I think were like the 2 worst years of my life with this, tough relationship, and being the doormat, the codependent, and finally just said enough, and drew the line in the sand and said, I need to move on. It's affecting my health. It's affecting my job. I need to move on. So there was a change. Many of us know or have heard about Father Greg Boyle here, who heads Homeboy Industries. I was honored to take Bernie when we had the 50th here, and we had an audience with Father Boyle, who Bernie has known for a number of years, doing some tremendous work here in Los Angeles with gangs. So he related this story, and he had a man working for him, a gang member, Lewis, and Lewis was one of the, I think he said, the biggest drug dealer in our area, in our community. And he was smart as a whip. And he never got caught. He was too smart. He always kept ahead of the law. Well, then something happened for him. He had a child, Tiffany. He changed then and started to work at the bakery. Homeboy Industry has this wonderful bakery. And so one of Lewis's job was to meet all the incoming buses, and it's a big deal. They bring people in all the time. The press comes in, various groups. There was a group that came in this particular story. They were farmers from Central Valley. So Lewis has to do his thing, and of course he complains constantly. And later in the day, Father Boyle, he's a Jesuit priest, Father Boyle talks to him, and he said, hey, Lewis, how did it go? And he said, what's up with white people anyway? And Father Boyle said, well, wanting to know, so what is up with us? And he said, damn. They're always using the word great. And he said, well, what do you mean? He said, well, this group got off the bus and they saw how clean and tidy everything was, and they said, this place is great. Then he saw all of us homies, oftentimes antagonistic towards one another, members of opposite gangs, working together. And he said, God, that's great, the group said. And then they tasted some of the bread. And they said, oh my gosh, this bread is great. They're just saying great all the time. Father Boyle said, well, we do. So I guess they do. So 4 months goes by, and Lewis, is with his granddaughter, Tiffany, and they're going to their apartment. And she opens the living room. They open the door, and she runs into the living room, extends her arms, and says with this big smile, this is great. Lewis gets on his knees and he said, "What's great, Mija?" And she says, "This is my home." So as Lewis is relating this story to Father Boyle, he seems unable to speak. At exactly that moment, their eyes meet, and as Father Boyle said, our souls swell up along with our eyes. We can't stop looking at each other, and tears, as he said, are running southward. And Father Boyle points at him and he says, "You did this. You've never had a home in your life, and now you have one. You did this. You were the biggest drug dealer in town, and you stopped and baked bread instead. You did this. You've never had a father in life, and now you are one. And I hate to have to tell you this, but you are great." So what is the catalyst or cause of these changes? I'm sure it's different for each of us. Many of you might have heard of Ryan Speedo Green, black opera singer. Amazing talent. Go on YouTube. He grew up in a trailer park in a home that had bullet holes in it. Because of his violent temper, he was placed in a special class at school, was actually thrown into juvie hall because he threatened to stab his mother and brother. And you can't believe what a success he is and what a voice he has. So, one of his voice coaches said, for every person that has a dream, they need someone to be their foundation. Who is your foundation? Maybe you're the foundation for somebody else. I know where my foundations are. I have a lot of them. Actually, the entire Sangha is a foundation. So for Lewis, it was probably Father G as a foundation. Maybe you have a friend. I love this verse that I found, the Spanish, when you speak in Spanish, when you speak of your great friend, you speak of him, I may blow this, de uña y mugre. Our friendship is like the fingernail and the dirt underneath. Isn't that beautiful? So I certainly see, as I was going through this koan, the working of the 3 pure precepts. And for those of you that aren't aware of this, we have these ethical guidelines, 16 of them that we use. Buddha, Dharma, Sangha is the 3 treasures, and then these 3 pure precepts. Cease doing evil, do good for others. Or another variation, cease all evil deeds, cultivate goodness, act for the benefit of others. Tenshin Roshi up at Yokoji said that to purify the mind is a kind and gentle encouragement to let go of all dualistic, selfish motivations in your practice of refraining from evil and practicing good. He also said that about the 3rd precept, that it's the natural fulfillment of the 2. And he said, absorption in the good of selfless liberation spontaneously overflows into nurturing all beings and helping them to mature. That's not the end of the story. There's more. But it's the end of my time. So we're going to open the floor up, so to speak. And so let's talk for just a moment about this idea of the Dharma exchange. Most of us are familiar, or many of us are familiar, with Shuso Hosen. We have our Shuso here. today, and we usually go through a year period, and it culminates in this beautiful Shuso Hosen ceremony. Unbelievably beautiful. It's in October. I invite you. It's really worth coming to. And as part of that, he does a short a talk, a Dharma talk. In legend is that it's the first Dharma talk, but as our instructions say, 8 minutes, no longer. And then he confronts the Sangha to test his knowledge. And it's very dramatic. We have this 3-foot-long staff, and holds it up at one point and says, "Now, you dragons and elephants in this Dharma hall, confront me in Dharma combat. Kaiku, you go first." And he takes this and boom, slams it down. We call this an exchange. Roshi says it's much more informal than a year-long head trainee Shuso training. So I looked the word up, and it says something offered, given, received in an exchange, like gift giving. So no violent connotations as suggested in Dharma combat. No. Therefore, all you kittens and lapdogs in this Dharma hall, please, let's exchange. Let's take on an exchange. Shuso, would you mind going first?
Dharma Holder, Shogun. My name is Kaigen. You have special insights into this particular story through your work and your own life. So what is it about stopping? What is this so special about this stop? The king couldn't stop him with armies and force, but Buddha, just by offering this word. So what was it about this word of stop that was able to penetrate into this life of evil and violence and turn it around?
Are you familiar with the word mikaha, Japanese?
Are you?
I am. It means it cannot be grasped. Now, they say, of course, that Buddha has this unbelievable power and ability to read people. And so there was, I think, of course, in this story, some magic going on. But Buddha is a mirror and a magnet. And I think that's what Angulimala saw.
Buddha's like a science experiment. Okay. Thank you very much. I don't know what to say. May your life go well.
Well, I think that's supposed to be my line, but that's
say that.
You'll learn.
Thank
you'll
you,
know in October.
Thank you, Dharma. Thank you, Dharma Holder. Shogun.
Thank you. Any questions whatsoever? You can be the newest person on the block or the most seasoned. That's okay.
My name is Shōgen, Dharma Holder Shōgen. You told us about Angulimala running and then stop. What would you do if you can neither stop nor go?
We call it running in place.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
I'm focused in on this change of heart, and you've seen this happening in the prisons, and also the ambivalence at the beginning of the story that we don't know exactly why Angulimala decided to collect the 1,000 fingers. There's an ambivalence there, but there also seemed to be a kind of karmic fate, because it was predicted he was going to be this way. So I'm very interested in what you think about that change of heart. What happens to a person from the inside. So he's confronted Buddha and his heart changes. And what's that about?
That's the koan. It's the change of heart. So, yeah, what is
changed
that?
his heart?
What is that about? Well, not being Angulimala, I can't really speak for him. But I just know from my own instances. And then observations, for example, working with prisoners. Sometimes it's a pretty dramatic shift where they just finally get it. With sitting over time, we have guys that are in the prison yard, and in the old days, somebody would piss them off, and that's it. They're duking it out, and they're in ag seg, in the hole. And then over time, I've watched some of them, not all of them, but some of them make this transition. It's a slow transition. And suddenly when they're having confrontations in the yard, they're not just reacting. They're taking a step backward, just maybe a deep breath. We do a lot of breath work. A lot of them have anger management issues, which is what got many of them in there. And they think about it before they act, realizing, hey, maybe this isn't such a good idea for me or anybody else. So again, I see it both ways. Sometimes it's dramatic, like Ben. He was just going down the hole and finally hit bottom. And those of us that work with alcoholics, oftentimes that's what it takes to make that change of heart.
And how about your heart? How's that going?
My heart is so open and full right now. My daughter's here, my wife's here, and my Sangha is here. It doesn't get better than that.
In the Zen teachings of Hung Po, it talks about the importance of relinquishing. Do you feel that stopping is the same as relinquishing, or is it something different?
No, I think that's a big piece of it, yeah. It's relinquishing your old ways and coming to that point where you get that and making that call and making that change. Yeah, absolutely. And who was it that you were?
Hung Po.
Hung Po, okay.
Zen teachings of
Yeah.
Hung Po.
Yeah. I don't know if that answers your question, but yeah, I think that's absolutely right. Because you're letting go of something, and sometimes, this attachment. So Angulimala in our story had this attachment to violence and was finally able to relinquish that, to let that go. So I think, yeah, very parallels.
Congratulations, Shōgen. Can you tell us more about a change of heart in your own life that you've experienced?
Well, one I'd mentioned when I was doing the talk about kind of in a marital relationship. Another was actually in a business venture where I was with some partners, and Carla was one of the partners with me as well. We had 4 Alzheimer's dementia care homes, and it was a struggle. We'd taken over the business. It was kind of a hostile takeover from the original person that was running it. And so we dove in, and we had been silent partners. And so we were investing, ultimately everything we had into it. Retirement, our savings, putting up loans against homes just to make payroll. And so that went on, and finally the other partners really didn't want to stop. And I said, no, can't do this anymore. There was so much debt service on the business, we could never get the cash flow to cover the debt service. And we went on, and I don't know that mentally it was not a good thing, but I think physically as well. And I just said, no, this needs to change. we have to stop. Subsequently, we lost everything. And I know I talked about this in, I think, a recent talk. Everything, the home, it's all gone. And then that's the famous I love my life story. Because ultimately, this turned out to be one of the best things that ever happened in my life. It opened up a whole nother door. Ability to practice more, work more in the prison, come down here a lot more often, spend more time with the San Luis Obispo group, and it's been awesome.
Not just great.
Great.
Congratulations.
Oh.
I'm
Neho next.
Oh.
No, go ahead.
Genku. Sometimes stopping or change of heart is not permanent. There's backsliding, or we think we've had a change of heart. What's your thoughts on that, and how we deal with that kind of vacillation back and forth?
Well, of course, yeah, that happens all the time. I'm sure you all experience that in your own practice, where sometimes you're gung-ho and you're doing your hour a day of zazen, and then you kind of backslide a bit, and then regroup. And so it's always like this. At least that's been my experience as well. And oftentimes, I'm kind of a football fan, and some of the coaches say, go back to the basics, back to just tackling. And so oftentimes I'll do that, back to just sitting and making sure that I've got that good foundation under me. I don't know if that answers it or not. But
Better than me.
Hey.
Hi, Dharma Holder, Shōgen. What's coming up for me is karma, the predetermination, and free will. And I'm thinking from my own point of view that I hope I never wake up one day and say, I need to kill 1,000 people. And
I hope not.
Right, but you see how there's that rut there, and I'm like, how did he come to this decision? And I can understand the atonement part of it, of coming out of it, but going into it, what a slippery slope. Is there something you could tease out of that?
Give me your finger on your right. I don't know, what you said about the karma is absolutely spot on, because the story, it's a much longer story, if you will, and there's a lot of karmic elements to it that brings him to this point of having this kind of this shadow side. He was, legend has it that in one of his former lives, he had been this powerful spirit, so-called yaka, and it used his superhuman strength to kill human beings to satisfy his appetite for human flesh. That's a lot of karma, a lot of baggage to bring forth, which actually just reminded me of my first date with Carla. Silence of the Lambs. My buddy that set us up, he said, Mark, he said, take her to see this, you'll be scared and she'll be right up against me. It works. She hates horror films, which I didn't really know at the time, but that's a great line. Yeah, I ate his
blind date.
I ate his liver with some fava beans and a good Chianti. I don't know if that answers it. Yeah, I think it's that shift. I don't know what causes it. Yeah, karmic stuff, cause and effect, for sure. Earth mirror.
Congratulations, Dharma brother. Thank you for stepping into this role. In terms of this shift, what comes up for me is he's got 999 fingers. And there's one he can't get. And this pattern of run, run, run suddenly doesn't work.
Doesn't work.
Right? Doesn't work. And it's kind of what led to my shift, right? Was just my habitual pattern just didn't work anymore. This moment of transformation feels to me also that just in our common sense of what's that thing we keep thinking is outside of us that we're racing to get. And when that doesn't happen, and just the Buddha beautifully mirroring back, to unmovable, settle in itself. And I'm wondering if
Isn't that
any.
Yeah, that's that idea of the mirror. He sees himself, for what he is. And then somehow, and of course, Buddha supposedly had these just unbelievable powers to be able to do that. Some of our teachers have that, I think, that ability as well. I mean, how many of us with our neuroses come to face, and after years, finally, your teacher will just say, "Stop it!"
And Ben's head on the pillow, right? Beautiful example of that moment.
Oh, yeah, Ben? Yeah.
So thank you for sharing that.
Ben's an amazing guy. He is an unbelievable artist. He puts out artwork into all these programs on the outside and has had all these awards and accolades. And he's doing, leading groups inside. Actually teaches yoga as well. And we're doing Tai Chi with the group up there. Not chai tea. Tai Chi. That's another story.
Oh, thank you for being there for him as he stopped. And thank you for your practice.
And I might add what's come up is this the aftermath. And Kenku, this maybe that kind of speaks to you a little bit about when you have these transformations, that doesn't mean life is grand. In the rest of the Angulimala story, he still has this reputation going around. So he becomes a monk, and he's going to be going out begging. Well, guess what? He doesn't, and it's close to his hometown. The begging wasn't too good. And then he has another experience, this with a lady giving childbirth. And he goes back to the Buddha and he said, I can't believe the unbelievable suffering that she was having. And he tells her to go back. And he does. And in the exchange, long story short, is that he becomes this, I don't know what you call it, the patron saint of birthing for women in the action that he took with this lady. And then in my own experience with some of the inmates and Seishin, Mark Cadiz is somebody I've been with the whole time for 17 years, and he's an ordained Zen priest, the only one in the state prison system since a Khan ordained him some time ago, some years ago. Well, he's been down almost 30 years, and I don't know how many parole hearings he's been to, a number of them, but every time there's a parole hearing, his victim, he murdered his girlfriend. The victim's wife and sister show up. And that puts a kibosh on the whole thing, at least so far it has. So they are, of course, and I don't mean to belittle the crime at all, but that was 30-some years ago. The Mark Cadiz of 30-some years ago is not the same guy I've been working with for 17 years. I would invite him into my home in a heartbeat. He could play with my 8 grandkids any day that he wanted to. This is a guy that is a model inmate, a model human being. The programs he does, He started with the hospice program in 2002. It was, at the time, one of only 2 hospice programs that the inmates were involved in the state prison system. That's an unreal guy. Then we also see those that get out. Many of us are familiar with Joko and how difficult that is. You've had somebody that's really had a transformation and gets out and now has to deal with society with all the cards, the deck stacked against them. It is so difficult. So it ain't always easy. Angulimala, one time, he had done this with the lady, and he attained sainthood, but still there's still some energy left from some of the other families of the victims, and he gets stoned and is bleeding profusely coming back to the Buddha. And the Buddha actually just said, his words, Angulimala, bear it. Bear it. Because he was on the precipice when he was about to kill his mother. We have the 5, I can't remember what they're called, but in terms of the 5 worst things you can do that will guarantee that you will be back in the hell realm for long, long, long time. And the first of those is killing your mother. So by not going that far, he saved himself a lot of grief. And Buddha said, this is part of your karma. You're going to have to live with it.
Congratulations and thanks for being my dad and my mom. So this is very, very new to me, and I hear you talking about these 3, and I can't remember what they're called, but it's
pure precepts.
Pure precepts. So
yeah.
The first was cease doing evil.
Yeah.
Do good and do good for others.
For others, yeah.
It seems that there's a lot more power behind stopping doing evil than having never done evil. Would you say that's reflected in this story?
Say that again.
There's more power behind the stopping of doing something evil than there is in never having done the evil. You think this is shown in the story?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Tough karma to be dragging around. I think very difficult. I don't know if that answers it. You might want to sit in this chair, then I'll trade your places.
So it's more. I don't want to say valuable. It's not the right word, but there's more. You gain more from that act of stopping.
But maybe on a personal level, I don't know if that's. I don't know. I really don't know. Yeah, you would think that, that would a great achievement that would be. So I feel pretty darn good about that. But there's an attachment there too. I'm special. I stopped killing.
But I never killed.
How do you know?
In this go. Ooh, spider. Oh, that's true.
And you're not a vegetarian.
I'm guilty. I might stop that.
Thank you for coming out too.
Thanks for having me.
She has 3 of our grandchildren. Our oldest grandson and 2 granddaughters.
That's my Zen practice. I'm not murdering them yet either. That's pretty good.
And that is a practice. Kanjo.
My name is Kanjo. Hello, Dharma Holder again. So the koan talks about stopping and specifically about a change of heart. And I'm curious about cause and effect. Which one is the cause and which is the effect? Or is there a difference?
Well, I don't think you can. It is so complex, this cause and effect. There are certain things, that it's very simple to look at, right? Cause and effect. He kills, right? Cause and effect. Some of the guys in prison, they know why they're there. This is an immediate effect of an action that they took. But when you start going into this deeper, it is so complex. Don't you think?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So to come up with some one easy answer, we have no idea all of the things spinning around with cause and effect, and that's partly with everything so interconnected. What one person does affects another, and trying to keep track of that would be mind-boggling.
And with this stopping that the Buddha tried to get Angulimala to do, did the stopping result in the change of heart? Or did
Which comes first?
Yes.
Let's say that it's the teacher is pointing, right? That's the finger, not the moon. Yeah, so it's it has to be his change. Although of course it's unfair because Buddha had all this clairvoyant abilities and to read people. They had lives together before, so they had spent time before. Buddha had his number, so to speak, and he knew what to do at the right time. And our teachers, likewise, that's I don't know if it's a gift or just something that over years and years and years of teaching that maybe they develop, or both, but they're able to give you what you need, point you in the right direction when you need it, and that's amazing. Uh-oh.
Kyogen, congratulations.
Thank you.
In the stories that you shared, personal stories and stories, more contemporary stories, there was always a moment of immense suffering that was part of that change of heart. Did Angulimala have a moment of suffering? And what's the place for you personally, and maybe in the story, of atonement for recognizing personal suffering and the suffering caused to others?
That's two questions. Yeah. So the first one again, I can only handle one at a time. I can't multitask, at least not anymore.
A lot of the stories you told, there was kind of a moment of deep suffering that the person experienced and said, never again. Was there that moment for
Angulimala?
story?
I think he had this mindset that no. I don't think he was suffering per se when he's doing all this murder. That was his mindset. His karma was coming out. He was enjoying it. As I mentioned, he could have gone to the charnel grounds and taken fingers off, but no, he'd rather do this. And so I think it was the mirror of the Buddha in front of him, where I don't know that he has that realization that I was just about to kill my mother, which is one of the gravest things, the heinous crimes that you can do. And he's steeped in the tradition of that day as well. Remember, he was highly, highly educated. So that's one of the things that you don't do. And you don't kill your dad. You don't kill an arhat. You don't spill the blood of a Buddha. And you don't create a rift in the Sangha. So I don't know. Yeah, I really don't know what it was that when Buddha turns the mirror on him, if that was it, where he has that reflection saying, damn, I better not do this.
Okay.
And the second?
And the second one is, for you personally, maybe in the story too, but for you personally, what is the place of atonement in this change of heart? Maintaining the change of heart, backsliding, coming back?
Yeah, it's key, as you know, in our practice. That's what we do. And what he's speaking about, we have atonement ceremonies on a regular basis. So we deal with these precepts, and these precepts aren't, those of you that don't know all of this, they're not like commandments that thou shalt do this, otherwise you're going to die, or you're going to go to hell. we know that you're going to break these precepts at times. Bernie Glassman always talked about the glass. You use the glass, you dirty the glass, and then you wash it. So this is this aspect of atoning when that happens, bringing yourself back into alignment. So yeah, really important. And in the story with Angulimala, there's a lot of that goes on that we didn't get to, where he's atoning for what he's done. And it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy for him. Is it easy for you?
No.
Are we hungry yet?
Okay, Dharma Holder.
Dharma Holder Ascension.
Let's see. We talked about those hitting bottom moments to stop, but and this also kind of reflects what you're saying. When you haven't done big violent things, you're mostly good, but there's those insidious, subtle points that you know aren't really beneficial, but it doesn't give you that much suffering. And yet, if you kept on doing it, it isn't really the best. How do you work with that and stop that?
Just stop it.
And your obstinate, unsuffering self says, no. No.
Just stop it! Woodshed.
Connected to that. No, really, is also we also see
She's tenacious.
people, and so are our faults, and so is our karma. It's tenacious. Is also when you see others who they don't see what they're doing wrong. There is no repentance. They're the Angulimala on the spree. And we see a lot of that in our culture, in our politics. The uncaring, I don't care. I am enjoying this, and I'm not experiencing a direct suffering because I also don't see myself as other. How do we bodhisattvas or other human beings affected by this, how do we view those folks?
Ascension, who can you change?
Obviously, I can't even change myself without a fault.
Well, the only thing I think we be the examples. We can be the examples and live the life. What else can you do? And hopefully they'll hit a point. And with the inmates, this is exactly what goes on all the time. Most of those guys, they don't want to change. So there's some instance. Somehow, as I talked in the story here, sometimes it's somebody that serves as their foundation that motivates them to make a change, to bring about an awareness. And again, I keep going back, I know, to the inmates, but because it's so hands-on, and you'll see that. You'll see this awareness. I mean, suddenly there's an awareness that you said, "Oh, I hadn't thought about that." And a change, maybe sometimes it's just a little pinhole, but it's enough to start widening, their awareness. So, I don't know. You're a political activist. So is Myoho.
But it's big patience is also what you're saying too. Is you never know when the change is going to happen.
I certainly don't. I don't have the Buddha's
In ourselves or
ability. Yeah, no, that's very true. We do the best we can, right? And as we say, just keep going. And it doesn't mean that we're doormats, that we lay down for things, that we have causes and things that we fight for.
Dharma brother,
Oh.
I'm your last question.
Wait a minute, we have one before. We've got to have just one. I can't let Reagan not ask a question.
Thank you so much.
really so much appreciated your talk. Very meaningful. And I realize I don't know. What?
But.
No, but I realize I don't know how, I mean, it's a very practical question. How do the men end up in your group in the prison? Like, there must be some moment of deciding to come to your group. How does that happen?
Well, it's actually totally voluntary for them to do that. But most of them come because of a recommendation. Somebody said, hey,
from another.
I've tried this. It really worked for me. Why don't you give it a go? So that's kind of what it does. And we used to have 40 to 60 guys every week. And it was every race, every denomination, some of them really like strong Catholics and Jews, but they would be there for the practice, for the sitting. And then the prison systems changed, so we went down to practically nothing. If we had 3 or 4 guys show up, it was a big deal. Now it's starting to grow again, but we have a new prison population, so word's getting around. We tried something new starting about 2 months ago. Mark Cadiz, that I talked about before, Seishin, is a Tai Chi teacher, so we're doing Tai Chi. And a lot of the guys are coming in, but we always do meditation as a part of that. So that's been experimenting.
All that you do. And for being you.
And for being you, Reagan. Thank you.
Dharma brother, on your last question.
Make it a good one.
Well, what came up for me was, being a priest and a chaplain, and you now a Dharma holder. There are so many ceremonies and events and trainings, people to chaplain, opportunities, messes to clean up. It's endless, and it's never going to stop, right?
That's right. That's job security.
So our practice is to stop or to move within it.
Is that a question? Is the what?
Our practice is to stop or to move within it.
Both.
Both?
Both.
And
we don't have to do it alone. That's what's so great about this. There are bodhisattvas everywhere. Look at the Sangha, the support that we give one another all the time, daily. And it's the same thing in the chaplaincy work. Yeah, it's that's a big koan. How can we deal with all this suffering, and yet amidst all joy and compassion as well? That's our koan, and we just keep going. And that's the first of the bodhisattva vows. Numberless beings, I vow to serve them. You just keep serving. But the part I like about it is that you don't have to do it alone.
So just keep going is just keep stopping?
Comings and goings and no comings and goings.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Which reminded me too, there was you remember the Alabama song, the Angels Among Us?
Sing it.
Are you going to sing
There
it?
are angels. It's about I believe that there are angels among us, sent down to us from up above. So I changed it. And it goes just one verse. Oh, I believe there are bodhisattvas among us, sent down to us from causes and effects. They come to you and me in our darkest hours to show us how to live, to teach us how to give, to guide us with the light of love. Numberless beings,
I vow to serve them. Inexhaustible delusions, I vow to end them. Boundless dharmas, I vow to practice them. Unsurpassable Buddha way, I vow to embody it. Numberless beings, I vow to serve them. Inexhaustible delusions, I vow to end them. Boundless dharmas, I vow to practice them. Unsurpassable Buddha way, I vow to embody it. Numberless beings, I vow to serve them. Inexhaustible delusions, I vow to end them. Boundless dharmas, I vow to practice them. Unsurpassable Buddha